Hi everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Movie Fight Club, where we duke it out about whether a movie is good or not. I'm Matthew, and I hate Fight Club.
And I am Mandy, and I think Fight Club is the greatest movie of our generation.
I mean, it's not Crossroads, so you're already losing, frankly.
I expected you to question whether or not this was a movie of our generation. Because it's on the line. Like, it's really for the Gen Xers, but it's like, do you consider yourself Gen X?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but...
Because I'm a millennial, frankly.
Well, we are both on that line, right? And the people who made this, they were all in their 30s in 1999, so it probably is really for Gen Xers and not for millennials, but
exactly, yeah. The movie for our generation also came out this summer and was The Matrix. And they are vastly different films.
They are vastly different films.
One is better than the other.
They are both very good movies. So, Matthew, we are podcasting together again after what feels like years and years and years.
107 days since we recorded together, and almost as long since we released something together.
Wow, I did not go back and figure that out. That's been a while. But we've both been doing wonderful podcasty things, just not with each other.
Exactly. Before we dive into it, let's set some of the rules of what we're doing.
Yes.
I think this is a trash movie that no one should have to watch, and no one should have to watch 3 times, as I have had to do in my life now. And I'm going to be arguing that point with you.
I'm slightly offended by that.
Okay,
I'm not really.
Mostly you agree.
No, I think this is one of the best movies of our generation. But this is Movie Fight Club, and we probably should actually reiterate what the rules are. The rule is not, this movie is trash, Matthew.
If we're talking rules, we have been randomly allocated our viewpoints on this film, no matter what we actually think, and we're going to argue those viewpoints. Yes?
Yes. Every week we will have a random movie, and we will randomly be assigned.
Yes.
Our side.
So, we're kicking off with Fight Club. I think this is trash. You think this is from our generation. Pfft.
Yes.
And I would like to throw in an addendum to the rules. No personal attacks.
Oh, absolutely. We can have personal stories about ourselves, but no personal attacks.
Yes.
Like, I can't say, Matthew, you're stupid because you don't like this movie.
And I'm not going to hold it against you that you like one of the worst films ever made.
All right. All right, let's jump into it then.
Absolutely.
I'm sure everybody's dying to know how this debate is going to go. So Fight Club is the 1999 adaptation of the 1996 Chuck Palahniuk novel of the same name. Directed by David Fincher, it stars Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, and Helena Bonham Carter. It is an anti-capitalist satire meant to remind you that getting everything you've been told to want will still leave you with nothing. On the 10th anniversary of its release, the New York Times called it the defining cult movie of our time. You can tell I wrote that because it is positive and favorable.
Yes.
And Matthew is giving me a look that I wish you guys could see.
And we'll probably say this on further episodes, but we will be spoiling. We're just going to talk about the films.
Absolutely.
So, I'm imagining if you've not seen the film, you're not listening to this anyway. So, fine. Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Anti-capitalist satire.
Yes.
This film wants to have a philosophy. It wants to be deep and discussive about modern trends and ideas and ideals. And it does not do any of those things. It says things. It says things that it thinks are incredibly clever. After a month, I didn't even miss television. And they talk about hunter-gatherers, and they talk about what it means to be a man. But they never do anything with it. They never say about why one thing is better than the other. They never say about why you should be raging against the machine. And then suddenly you start seeing them taking money from the machine and watching television and finding it fun to watch television together. It wants to say the things.
We're just watching the news about their own exploits. That doesn't count.
It never commits to what its ideas are. It says the thing and then it never backs it up.
Okay. I 100% disagree with you. Which, hey, I'm supposed to, right?
Which you're supposed to. I'm hoping you'll give me examples of where it does so I can go, okay, I missed that.
Oh, but you're going to want specific things. My notes don't have specifics because I didn't know what your specifics are going to be. Okay, I think I'm going to...
Just so we're clear, I didn't come to play.
I see that. I think I'm going to start with kind of my more academic-y point that I wanted to make. And I will have a link. We will have a link in the show notes to a specific article that I read because I'm going to quote it and I want us to source our material and not steal ideas of other people. So on the website lithub.com, a woman named Rebecca Renner wrote an article that she calls "Everyone Misunderstands the Point of Fight Club." And I'm going to say, Matthew, you have misunderstood the point of Fight Club.
Okay.
Like, I will be right there with you and say Fight Club has not aged well. But it's largely because everybody's misunderstood the point of Fight Club. People have latched onto the repression and how it's a hyper-masculine way of expressing anger against the world. But that's not what it's doing. It has a message. It's a very specific message. It's not glorifying like toxic masculinity and just beating things up for the sake of beating things up. Like, it's arguing and recognizing that the patriarchy hurts men too. Like, at its core, this movie is trying to teach us that the American dream is a lie. Like, that's really what it's doing. And I don't know if because it's so very American that you and I would have such a different perspective on it.
Because, the American dream means very little to me.
Right. Like, this movie is very specifically talking about the American dream and the American dream being a lie that we have all been fed. And you get that through a lot of the quotes in the movie. Things like Brad Pitt says at one point,
"Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We're the middle children of history, man. All been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't."
And that's kind of one of the big points, is that we've been fed this lie. And coming up to the end of Gen X and the beginning of the millennial generation, like, this is huge. Because up until then, the American dream was what we lived for. That's what our parents lived for. That's what our grandparents lived for. The loss of that is why many millennials struggle to feel like we're adults.
Okay.
And I think this movie came at a perfect time because it's addressing that. And it's specifically saying, no, don't do that. Rebecca Renner says, Fight Club's real philosophy is the rules. The dream isn't worth the struggle, our freedom, our souls, or the time we have on this earth. Be who you are, whether that looks like traditional masculinity or not. And I think that's just so relatable to American millennials.
Okay. But it doesn't say those things. He does. You have the quote in there that he does say. And he talks about the middle children of America. And it's a point I've seen made by comedians and on other shows and other things. But they never do anything with it. They want to disrupt the status quo or the American dream or the way things are done. And the way they decide to do it is by blowing up buildings.
By specifically blowing up the buildings that contain the debt of Americans.
It's the credit card companies.
Yes, well, the credit card companies.
And they don't have the debt. The banks have the debt. The mortgage owners and the land owners. If the credit cards are blown up, the people who have money to fall back on will be okay. The people who have $20,000 Amexes and $2 million in the bank, they won't care about their credit cards. The people who need their credit cards to survive will now no longer be able to get credit. and will not have the thing that allows them to go and buy things. So they won't have the debt. You're absolutely right there. Money they might be paying for something. But I don't think that philosophy of the thing that they're doing at the end works.
Well, I think you can't pull on that thread too hard. I will give you that. You can't pull on that thread too hard, but I understand I understand the reason behind it and how you might expect that to work, even though it wouldn't. Okay,
so I'm going to drop the thing of what it actually does in financial institutions because you've conceded the point. Good. It never says blowing up buildings is wrong. The film does not say that blowing up buildings is wrong. He tries to stop it, and in the end, he stands there in a very romantic way watching it.
He does. I don't think the movie is meant to say... I mean, it's called Fight Club. It's not actually about fighting people, but that's like the vehicle for the message is violence. So I don't see how this movie would ever be able to say that blowing up a building is bad.
There would be a way. I'm not going to rewrite the film for them.
Okay.
Because I want to move on from the film, frankly. The issue is, and this is where we move into where I think the film has a distraction going on from where it could be. It could be an interesting film discussing the philosophy of the American dream, capitalist, consumerism, culture, something along those lines. It has Tyler Durden. Mm-hmm. And it has this twist, in inverted commas, at the end. Mm-hmm. Which dominates a large chunk of the discussion about the film.
Yes.
And therefore distracts from the thing, from the sort of message it's trying to give.
I don't think it does. I don't think it distracts, but okay.
Tyler Durden is the inner voice of the narrator. And it's annoyingly obtuse that they never give his name. Because he has asked his name on several occasions and doesn't give it. And it's like, just don't have him say it. We just don't learn it. It doesn't matter. He's an everyman in that way. Fine.
Just call him Jack.
He's the person where you're sat on the bus and you want to knock the hat off the person on the seat in front of you because you think it would be funny. Mm-hmm. You don't do it. You have an inner voice that stops you from doing those things. But Tyler Durden would do that just to see what happens. Mm-hmm. And then it's gone to the nth degree of, I wish I could tell my boss to go flip himself and blackmail him for lots and lots of money. Mm-hmm. And again, it never says that those things are wrong. It makes Tyler Durden cool, and you want to be him because he is Brad Pitt, and he is charming. And as the film goes on, and I quite liked this, Brad Pitt was working out more and more as the film went on and going to salons, while Edward Norton was eating less and becoming emaciated. So as the film goes on, you want to be more like Tyler and less like Edward Norton. And that's not right. There should be something saying you don't do this. We live in a society where you should work with the people around you.
So, but one of the themes about this movie is identity. Who are you? Who do you want to be? How do you reconcile those two things? And we very specifically get that, right? We get who Jack, quote unquote, Jack is. We get who Tyler is. Once Jack recognizes how destructive Tyler is, he realizes, I don't want to be that. And then once he figures out that Tyler is actually himself, he takes steps to stop him. To the point that he literally puts a gun in his mouth and shoots out part of his internal psyche. Which would never actually work in real life, but this is fiction, right?
Okay.
So I think by having Jack put the gun in his mouth and pull that trigger, they are explicitly saying Tyler is bad on his own. Now, they don't do it because of the way they end the movie, and I had a conversation with my husband about this. They don't clearly specify whether or not Tyler is actually reintegrated into Jack. Like, did we get a melding of the two and Jack has now grown from this experience, or did we just kill Tyler? Like, it's not clear in the movie.
Or did we just kill Jack?
I think we're clear that Tyler's gone.
Okay.
I do believe that.
That's only because we've never seen Tyler as Jack, except for the moment of revelation, where we have those short clips.
That's true.
I think this is the thing that annoys me then, that you have this big discussion about identity and about Jack and about Tyler on top of a film that's trying to do some philosophizing about the world and the nature of the world and how we treat people around us and what we can and can't get away with.
So you think it's doing too much, trying to do too much?
Yeah, I think it is a distraction. And it's one of those things that when you then watch it back knowing the twist, it's not as good. This is why it really has annoyed me. This is the third time I've seen it, and I'm just going, but that doesn't work. How does, these things, you're right in saying we shouldn't pull on these threads, because it suddenly starts coming apart. Like, wait, so he just doesn't remember days and doing these things? And
oh, no, I buy that. I don't have any problems with that.
The stuff that he's set up and not noticed that he's setting up, and that he doesn't realise he's been up all night having sex, that I don't buy. It's...
I love the idea that Jack is an unreliable narrator and we just don't know it until the end. And it changes the entire spec of the movie, right? Because then, like, you think of the times when he's actually physically, he's in the room with Marla. But we're seeing Jack outside. He's imagining himself as Jack in that moment because Jack didn't live that, right? Jack/Tyler is actually in that room with Marla, but we're seeing his hallucinated version of himself. And that's all sorts of crazy mind-fuckery, but I love it. I do. I really, I don't know how to explain it other than to say I think it's clever. When I watched it this time, knowing the twist, I spent the entire movie watching it, trying to find subtle examples of how it was set up, and didn't find very many.
Okay.
Which could be good or bad. You could argue that means they're lying to their audience. But I don't actually think they are, because they did do a good job of going back and showing flashbacks of things that actually happened. And showing the scenes that we watched with only Jack there, right? So they did try to show us that. And so I don't fault them for that. And so I find it immensely clever.
Okay. It's reminiscent of films, sort of older films with Spencer Tracy type actors or, great actors of yore, doing these interesting things with two roles and acting against themselves or pretending things are there or aren't there. And it could make a really interesting thing about, you're right, about identity and about what you can get away with. But because it's also trying to do this big stuff, I wish it committed somewhere to either of them. In fact, what it reminds me of is The Machinist, a Christian Bale film, which has a lot of this sort of thing. It has a lot of this sort of thing going on about it as well. And you sort of realise some of the stuff he's seen when you get to the end. You go, I can see it all. And even then, and this is, I'll go back to the Matrix comparison. The Matrix has revelations as it goes that are not necessarily reveals, but understanding who the characters are and what they're capable of in this world. And then when you go back to the beginning and watch it again, there's subtle references and things going on that you pick up on where the guy turns up and buys the stuff on him and says, "You're my own personal saviour." Little things that just make the whole experience a little bit more complete and a little bit more interesting for repeat watchers.
Okay.
I think this is deteriorated by repeat watches.
I just disagree, honestly. I found, even, let's put the story aside for a minute, right? Because it's the story that you seem to have the most problem with. So far, that's where we started. Okay, all right.
Well, we're on to note 2, so.
I think the performances are stunning. I think Edward Norton and Brad Pitt both gave and even Helena Bonham Carter, all three of them, I think gave stunning performances. Edward Norton as the unreliable narrator that we don't realize until the end, he pulled that off wonderfully. Before this, we had really only ever seen Brad Pitt in those pretty boy roles. And here he stepped up to kind of be that darker, edgier character. And I think he nailed it. I think the visuals in this movie are actually quite stunning. I love the way, you pointed this out. Tyler's becoming more colorful and fit while Edward Norton is becoming thin and sallow. Norton's scenes are usually in shades of blue, and you get a lot of red with Tyler's. I like those things. Like, there was a lot of care and thought put into the visuals of this movie.
Okay.
It's super quotable. I can't tell you how. I haven't seen this movie since I was in high school, and I still say things like, I am Jack's raging bile duct. Come on. I do.
The rules of Fight Club are the only thing I think
Okay.
I hear quoted from this film.
Oh, I hear other people do, I am Jack's blah, blah, blah. Like, that's just...
I would agree with you on the performances. I mean, Edward Norton is the main actor in this, and you would, looking back on Fight Club, you would say, oh, a Brad Pitt film.
Yeah.
But no, it is all on what Edward Norton does in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Helena Bonham Carter rocks up and does what she does. So if that works for you, terrific. It's making me think you haven't seen 12 Monkeys?
I have not.
And maybe 7?
I did see 7.
Okay.
But the only thing I really remember from 7 is what's in the box.
Okay. So Brad Pitt was... You're right, he did a lot of pretty boy things.
He did Meet Joe Black right before this.
Meet Joe Black, Interview with a Vampire, various other things of that ilk. But he was experimenting with what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives a very good performance here as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, he does, absolutely.
Yes. You mentioned... and the effects. The effects are really good. I was genuinely impressed with some of the CG visuals. Every time I watch something from the 90s, if the CG's half good, I'm like, oh, that's good. Well done, them.
Right?
Yeah. Bless them.
They tried so hard.
Yeah. It does feel like there's this thing sort of late 2000s or the first decade of the 2000s that's when CG actually gets good. But no, there are good examples to be found. So that's fine. You mentioned the film and being about toxic masculinity.
It's not about toxic masculinity.
I don't want to use the they don't denounce it argument again. But there were Fight Clubs set up following this film, and still are Fight Clubs set up following this film, and people in those Fight Clubs were found making pipe bombs and so on.
That's because people don't understand Fight Club.
The film does not go far enough on this is a bad way to live. Because it does talk about, isn't it great to feel like a man, and you're going to taste stuff the best you've ever tasted it and feel the best you've ever felt by going through this process. It never goes into, and look at what you've lost, look at how bad it goes for you. And it then denounces people like Bob. And Bob is the one who gets killed, and he is the most womanly, possibly even more so than Helena Bonham Carter, of any character in this film.
But they do roll that back a little bit. I mean, his name is Robert Paulson.
Yeah, he's deified in dying, but it's still the womanly character is the one who can get killed. And even the way that Helena Bonham Carter is treated, I know she talks about, I've never, had it that good since grade school and so on. But it doesn't sound like fun, and it doesn't sound like she's being treated well to enjoy it.
Oh, she's not. She's not.
It's...
All right. I really want to read this whole long thing to you, but I can't.
No, you can't.
We're going to link to it.
Because you also want to read a thing from one person who says, everyone else is wrong about this film. Do you know who writes that stuff? Incels. Do you know who likes this film? Incels.
No. Okay, actually, that's great. So there's something in here specifically that says, if this story was happening today, Project Mayhem would be rounding up incels and turning them into anti-capitalist freedom fighters, men who try to destroy the patriarchy instead of bending to its will and lining its pockets.
So they're saying they would be recruiting incels?
To change them, yes.
To change them?
Rounding them up to change them, yes.
By blowing up buildings?
Well, they wouldn't be blowing up buildings
because
now.
These are the people who go to schools with guns and stand in casino hotels with guns and it is disturbing, and it's even more annoying that the one person we see shot with a gun to death is shot by a black police officer. Well, that's not the truth we know.
No, it's not. But this, I mean, okay, the movie hasn't aged well, but I still think a lot of that is because of its misinterpretation. I think these specific people that you're talking about misinterpret this movie. Instead of thinking that it denounces capitalism and denounces toxic masculinity, they believe it caters to their entitlement. And I think that's what you're seeing. And I see this movie as not that.
Okay.
Like, I see it as, I can understand why someone would get that, but that's because they're just looking at the surface level. And this movie has layers. And
okay, the film does have layers. There aren't many ways of reading it, and it's been interesting doing the reading building up to this, that it has those layers. But its absolute surface that you watch this film and can take away is about, isn't it great to be a man and punch things and blow up buildings? And it should not have that as its most obvious and easy reading.
So I'm going to read this bit because I think this makes sense. But she writes, instead of consumerist culture, MRA Fight Club fanboys want power, silent women, and wait for it, the American dream, just by another name. In other words, they're a bunch of rule followers trying to remake the world in the way they've always been told it should be.
Oh, that's good.
That is specifically the antithesis of Fight Club, though, because the ethos of Fight Club is the rules. I'm sorry, I keep saying that because you're gonna have to bleep it out. But that's what this movie is, and if you misinterpret it, if you don't see that, if you think that this movie is glorifying those toxic traits, then this sounds like I'm saying you specifically, and I'm not. I'm not talking about you. But, and I guess I really think that the disconnect is American versus British in this specific context, honestly. Because I think being an American millennial coming in at the tail end of the American dream, still struggling with the idea because, I mean, we've got quote-unquote boomers now who are still advocating that lifestyle, very much so, right? And the political climate in America is still very much boomers versus millennials. And I think this movie just speaks to that so much. And that point of the middle children, the generation between that are the Gen Xers, the MTV generation, who inherited enough of the way boomers could live and earn money and the system set up to privilege from them, or to gain privilege from them, but at the same time saw that the world needed to change. So there's a massive split in there. Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. There are ways of doing these things. The thing that I'm reminded of is American Beauty, that has some of this about identity and sticking two fingers up at the world.
Yeah.
And blackmailing your boss to make money from it and so on.
Yeah.
And it has a person who believes in the military and living an honest lifestyle and it ends up being very homophobic despite being gay themselves and kills our protagonist. And I feel like within all that, it does speak to, it was his choices that led him to the point where someone did stick a gun in his head. And it shows us the destructive nature of what he did, that it drove his family apart and his daughter was running away because of his decisions. And
yeah.
So I think that does a good thing. And it's hard because this is a film that wants to have this counterculture, counter-capitalist consumerist
It's very
idea
subversive.
That had a video game made about it.
I know it.
There is a Fight Club video game.
I was looking through kind of the pop culture ramifications of this movie, and I was like, "Oh my god, they all missed the point."
Yeah, right.
They completely missed the point.
to the extent, I don't think that message works in a film. I'm not sure it works in a film fronted by Brad Pitt. I don't think it works as a film that I think is trying to be as flashy as this.
Well,
David Fincher.
I mean, to be honest, it didn't work to start with. It was, for all intents and purposes, it was a box office flop. It didn't gain notoriety until the DVD release. So maybe that helps it's anti-capitalist. I'm kidding. It doesn't, because it sold still so many.
Because it sold huge numbers.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that for what it is, what it's intended to be, I think they made the best possible movie they could make out of this story.
Okay.
To put it in that format. The book is better. I've read the book.
Okay.
The book is better. It's a little bit different, but I think translating the book to a visual medium, I don't know that anybody could have done a better job than what these guys did.
Right.
And I think it's a movie it was a book worth being adapted. And I think I'm still going to stay on this train that I think it's supremely clever and I think it has a strong message. And unfortunately, most people who watch it just don't understand it.
Okay.
That's all.
I think it's trash for everything I've said.
Yep.
And it is a film that uses the phrase bitch tits a lot to describe a man suffering the side effects of his cancer treatment.
Yes.
So
when I was, this movie came out in 1999. I was senior in high school, and I remember the following summer, I had graduated high school. A group of my girlfriends and I went to the beach for a week to celebrate graduating high school, and we watched this movie no less than, I'm going to say 2, maybe 3 times that week.
Oof.
1, because we thought we were supremely intellectual. 2, I mean, have you seen Brad Pitt in this movie?
He does have a bit in the middle where he mocks the look of men in adverts advertising underwear with their tops off.
I think mock is a strong.
He does look at it and go,
there, but I think,
is that what a man
is that
looks
a
like?
man?
It's like, yes, because that's you in the picture, Brad.
I don't know. I think, and you did not change my mind. How about that? That's what I'm going to say, is I still very much believe this is one of the greatest movies of our generation. Or perhaps the generation before us. I'm unclear on that line.
Well, it's not down to us. If you're listening, and you're listening in a short time after we release this, you get to have your say as well. We will put up a poll on social media. We'll definitely put something up on Twitter, because I know I can do polls there. I suspect I can on Facebook, so I'll try to do it on Facebook. I'll even try to put something up on Discord as well. So have a look out, have a vote for whether you think hashtag Team Mandy, greatest film of our generation, or you think hashtag Team Matthew, this film is trash, and uses the phrase bitch tits.
Okay. Now, I don't want to make people wait until the next episode to find out what our true feelings were.
Oh, really?
So can we do that? I mean, this one is easy. This
Okay,
one's
go on.
easy. But I just don't want people to have to wait. So you're fine with us doing this? Like telling people now?
Yeah? Oh, well, okay. I'll tell you
don't
what we'll
look
do.
convinced.
We'll let the listeners help us on this. We will reveal now what we actually think about this film. And we will do that maybe a different way in a future episode. And we'll see how they come out. And people can give us feedback and tell us on all the social media accounts where you can find us at Eloquent Gushing.
All right. I am hoping, well, we are either the world's best actors or we both randomly got assigned our true feelings.
Do you
on this
actually
movie.
like this film?
I do actually like this movie.
This film is appalling. It's terrible.
like
There is
it.
nothing to like about this film. It's disgusting and violent. It does not make its points cohesively.
I stand by everything that I said.
Wow.
100%.
Crikey.
No personal attacks, Matthew.
No, I'm not. No. But oofa doofa.
All right. Well, what are we going to argue about next time?
Let's hit. So we have exciting randomizing buttons in spreadsheets. Let's hit randomize. So I think this was our first sort of chosen one. So let's do a classic in inverted commas.
Okay.
Classics are AFI Top 100, Best Picture winners, Cannes winners, all sorts of, great and worthy as chosen by critics films. So when I click the button, we get film 168, The Wizard of Oz, 1939.
Oh my gosh. That one, oh, that's going to be really hard for somebody.
It's going to be really hard to argue about why it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. It's going to be really hard for somebody.
Because, they are classics for a reason. So that might be the thing.
Well, that's true, but there are classics that are not good.
That's true. Right, shall we find out who is doing what?
Please.
I'm going to hit the spinner.
Spin the button.
It has chosen that I am the fanatic of The Wizard of Oz.
Mother. All right.
So
maybe on rewatch I will actually hate it.
Maybe you will watch it and go, it's colorphobic against green people. And ladies with striped socks.
I have to argue that The Wizard of Oz is a bad movie.
Yes, you do.
All right. Can do it. Okay, Matthew, where can folks find us on the internet?
So you can find us pretty much anywhere. Look up Eloquent Gushing. That's our podcast network. And you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, all sorts of places. You can find us especially on Patreon. If you like what you hear, we do have a Patreon, and we love all our supporters who help us to deliver exactly the shows that you're hearing, as well as other shows such as Marvelous and Enter the Fold.
I am Mandy Kay. You can find me at Mandy Kay, MANDIKAYE on Twitter. Where you will also find me talking about some of my other podcasts. Enter the Fold is about Shadow and Bone, the show on Netflix. And even though we recorded and released our Season 2 Discovery of Witches episode months and months and months ago, the show is just dropping live on AMC here in the States. So we are talking about it all over again.
Nice.
So check us out. Where can folks find you, Matthew?
You can find me anywhere, particularly on Twitter at Matthew Vose, Vose. And I talk about all sorts of things. You never know what's coming next, but particularly lots of Marvel stuff, as I co-host a show called Marvelous, where we talk about the Marvel TV and films in the MCU.
It's so good, you guys. Go listen. Go listen. It's good. I'm not on that one, and I'm still telling you it's really good.
It's basically if you like hearing me chat with smart women. Hey, it's another show I get to sit and smat with smart women. I get to sit and smat with smart women. Good. Because that's how smart and chatty I am.
Oh, yeah.
And don't forget, the first rule of Movie Fight Club is to tell all your friends about Movie Fight Club. Which, weirdly, is the second rule as well.